what's the difference between Googling and using ChatGPT? If I was going to Google something like, what are the Centrelink rules, Jay, about whatever, historically I'll get a whole bunch of results, and it was incumbent upon me to read all those results, critically think and compare and work out the answer myself. Now I just plug in to the GPT and say, what's the answer? I'm seeing more and more in customers and outside of our customer base, people will just, it said X. The answer is X. And I say, have you thought that through or double checked it? No, why would I double check it? It says this. That's fundamentally wrong. And I can prove it to you, with data.
We've got some fresh new young talent doing some things that I know you haven't heard before.
1, 2, 3, listen.
I was trying to think about what the take on the conversation today would be. And I was obviously thinking about sort of the future of financial services business and like how technology, outsourcing, partnerships can like impact positively the client experience. So I think we spend so much time talking about systems and processes and efficiencies. You go, but what are we actually doing this for in the first place? And also, I'm just looking at some of the notes I had in terms of why I think the changes in financial services businesses with technology, outsourcing, partnerships is such an important discussion, particularly in a difficult labour market, like when good people are actually hard to find. Shit people are easy to find. They're easy. They'll take a job any day, but good people are actually really hard to find. And I was thinking that. I was trying to think of an analogy of the three of us, so Quirk, Fin365, and Burke Britton. And what my notes here say that I could see firsthand what happens when you combine the right CRM with the right people and the right mindset. You have a pretty magical alchemy. And it's kind of the example I had in my head was, when you've got a couple of mates that are from different networks and you go, it'd be awesome if we could get these people together because I reckon we'd have an awesome time. And I think that is what we've experienced when I start to think about what the transition over the last decade has been. And I think about the pivotal interactions with you, Greg, when we first started having conversations about systems and process and technology and data. And
sounds like me, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Data.
Yeah. And for you, Joe, having that ability to get the right people at the right time for the right need. And that, to me, I think we talked about some of those principles, the leadership principles, but combine those, like a core mission, with these types of partnerships, and it's that actually allows us to scale, but scale whilst delivering exceptional service to our clients. And I think that has been probably thinking about what has been so positive about the relationship that we've had with Quirk or SMSF Paraplanners previously and Fin365 and Burke Britton is that we have decided what we're really good at, and we've said we've tried to build CRMs, we've tried to build sexy spreadsheets, we've tried to build our own internal administration support, paraplanning, and to varying degrees they haven't worked. So we've got to work out what we're actually doing really well, and kind of outsource the rest. Now, let's go back a little bit and talk, Greg, about your
how far back? You and me, 2006?
Let's go back.
How far back do you want to go?
You go back as far as you want, but your background, how you found yourself at Fin365, I'm going to ask you the same question, Joe, and then you guys are going to tell me the aggregation, the joining at the hips of Quirk and Fin. So I'll start with you, Greg.
Sure. I was lucky enough when I was young, like most people, especially these days, to not really have a clear direction or a passion or a pathway when I was young. To fill my hours, in my non-studying hours, I went and there were actually ads in the paper in the old days, Jay, if you weren't aware. People would place ads for jobs in the newspaper, and I saw one and called a fellow up, a very nervous 19-year-old, 20-year-old, whatever I was, on the phone. They said, come down to Tullamarine and have a look. It turned out to be a family-owned logistics company, and to cut the story short, within 6 months, I was running a fleet of 30 trucks and a warehouse that was very, very large, and I was 20. So the grace under fire, things you were speaking about earlier in terms of the Jocko stuff you were doing, I had to learn very early on and I was grateful, and I still speak to that family sometimes. The things I had to learn very quickly when dealing with, grizzly 50-year-old truck drivers who have a chip on their shoulder or very impatient customers when they had some very large contracts was unexpected, but it fundamentally changed me at a young age in terms of the ability to recognize problems and patterns very quickly and solve them, try to juggle stakeholder management very, very quickly, get someone angry on the phone, the truck driver's smashed into some car. So that happens all the time. But that's changed me fundamentally when I was young. I didn't have those skills when I was young. So I did that for about 5 or 6 years, and I used to run the Formula One, all of the freight for it, try to run that under pressure, and would not sleep for 36 hours straight for the most part. Trying to do those things in your early 20s is a very different work and occupational path than most people. So it wasn't deliberate, but coincidental. In the early 2000s, my financial advisor at the time, I had one from an early age. I can't remember how I stumbled upon him, but I had one. He had an opening at his firm for an operations manager. They were an A&P firm, like we all three of us were once upon a time. And I was given the only thing I'd ever really known was logistics and freight and flights and trucks and things. I declined the offer in the first instance and replied to the principal and said, thank you for the opportunity, but I don't know anything about financial services, Jay, at all, and I declined the offer. And they said, well, it's unusual for a referred applicant to decline even interviewing. So they thought that was gracious of me. But in the end, I joined that firm. Within a year or two, I was the first non-advisor equity partner in an advice firm. The background of that, we won a whole bunch of awards, and we went on an M&A warpath and buying up and swallowing up as many advice firms as we could because we wanted to scale. And the vision of that point in time was just get big. And it was a very, very base vision, just get big as we could, because we thought big is good back in those days. And remember, we spoke about some of those acquisitions in time. And I got really, really good personally in M&A. I could look at books, they call them in the financial advice world in the old days. I would look at a book and in 2 seconds know whether it was good or bad, how we would market it, how we would control the narrative to the client base. Because as you will know, Jay, it's sometimes not a good feeling as a customer or an end client to say, we've bought you, Joe, from it's the next. So we got really, really good at controlling that. Like all things in business, sometimes marriages end, Jay. Sometimes you fall out of love and sometimes succession plans don't go well. And I'm very, very grateful for the opportunities I had with that firm, and I learned a lot. And again, had a lot of good opportunities, Jay, just like you did, to go around the world and do, offshore conferences and go to the States and go to Argentina and all sorts of wonderful places. And met a lot of great advisors. I saw another advisor at the RACV yesterday, that 30-year A&P advisor, and ran into him and had a great chat. So that's how I got into financial services. I became an advisor, obviously, got accredited and all that sort of thing. But my passion was always running the business and all the various facets that entails. There wasn't, while you can go and do a degree in these things, Joe, you well and I both know, the way you learn marketing is doing it, trying to sell and trying to knock on doors and trying to get leads and trying to get referrals. And the way in which you learn HR, Joe, is hiring advisors and firing them and hiring staff and losing the best ones, and that happens. That's how I've learned every part of running a business. Post that firm, I went and bought another one, or bought into another one. I think the second firm was 60 staff or 70 staff, something like that. More problems, more staff, more problems. Different ones at that. Again, fell out of love. It happens. I know you know this, Jay. You fall out of love sometimes. Again, the second time. So I had a second divorce. It happens. But I'm absolutely grateful for those things because they made me who I am. I think the lessons I learned, and taking credit for someone else's work here, but the A&P succession plan guides were written on me. They actually wrote the case study on me in terms of write a shareholder agreement, Jay, and check what's in it and all these sort of things, because I sat there with the A&P coaches at the time, Jeff and there's other Scott Weeks and those other characters. They wrote it on me because things can go wrong, and it's not until, just like insurance, you don't know until you need it. They wrote those things out. But again, I was hopefully not too bitter when I helped them write that stuff, but I learned a lot of things. And again, a lot of this was not academic. It was not degrees, post that. It was not, certificates in X, Y, Z. It was just, I've seen and done everything. Not through my own choice. It just fell on my desk at some point. But to cut to sort of the data part and where we are today, in around 2011 or 12, I've always loved patterns and I've always loved detail. Now, we're talking on the way up here, John and I, about... Well, yes, to some extent. The analogy I use all the time, Jay, even to customers and even like yourself or Amy, is I have an ability to see the matrix. That's what it is. I can walk into that business across the road and unpack in 2 seconds how it works, what the gaps probably are, what the staff problems might be, what the efficiencies might be. I can see very quickly the patterns for some reason. And we use it a lot in consulting for our firms and say, well, show me what you're doing and how are those referrals coming, Jay, and what about this and what about that? We can do it very quickly.
Can I just add
go.
one thing there? One question that you've asked a lot is, what are you solving for?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Which, again, it's like it's the third law we talked about. Like what are you trying to prioritize for here? Because when you're in the guts of your business, it's very hard to see. And I think one of the advantages and one of the skills that you have brought whenever we've had a problem is the ability to say, okay, what are you actually trying to solve for here? Because there's a lot of noise here. To your point, the ability to be able to pattern recognition is not always very easy when
You're in the weeds.
And so,
Totally agree.
like having...
including on ourselves, by the way. We find that ourselves sometimes. We're looking at our own business when I'm a lot of time looking externally on your business.
Well, you know
we're in the weeds ourselves.
Well, you know what that is, because it's much easier to give other people advice.
It's the plumber that the leaky tap at home. That's exactly what
I
that
think
is.
that's the reality of needing outsourced partnerships or needing mentors or needing people that are third-party removed or coaches. Like, it gets poo-pooed. But, I mean...
Why? Why does it get poo-pooed?
I think the idea... I think in Australia particularly, we tend to poo-poo a lot of things. We tend to have tall poppy syndrome. And if you, like the idea of saying, I have a mentor or I have a board of advice or I seek counsel from somewhere else, like, I think that for a long time has been looked down upon, where, and ego drives a lot of it as well. Like this idea, and you mentioned it, and I experience the same thing where you figure, I can just do everything. I'm young and I can just acquire and build and grow. And all of a sudden you realize that, that's very ego driven. And I actually need someone with an external perspective, with other experiences, that's smarter than me, to be able to give me some direction. Again, I think that's one of the common themes of why we've enjoyed outsourcing some of the things that we thought we could do in-house previously, is I want to hear what Joe has to say. I want to hear what Greg has to say. They've seen shit, right? And they can offer shit. And Greg's a different personality to me. Put us together, the sum is greater than its parts. Sorry, I interrupted the story there, mate.
No, totally fine. I relate to all of that. You're right. So in the 2010s or so, I'll mention some things you remember: MoneyWise, VisiPlan, Coin, the incumbent bits of software. I mean, this is industry specific.
PTSD.
Yeah, I know. There's many hours. Remember sitting in Clifton doing training in the old days.
Mm-hmm.
Those are very industry specific tools for those that aren't in financial advice. They're basically incumbent tools that everybody used, but they were very, very clunky. And they weren't really built for business management, let's call it, in terms of running your business well and promoting empowerment of accountability of activity and client service. And they were just built to do a very clear widget, as in modelling advice for customers. So I managed to convince my business partners at the time to spend six-figure money to go and build our own tool. And they thought I was nuts. They said, well, why would you go and spend money and hire a developer to build this thing? These other guys have already solved this problem. But when I pointed out to them that we were using custom access databases and spreadsheets and whiteboards behind us to track leads, and I had a whole bunch of tools that were very disparate and spread out, plus the tool we had, they said, yeah, that's true. But they didn't recognize it because I was doing all the work to produce those reports and understand what was going on in the business. So they didn't see it as a problem. In any case, we went around, and again, this is the 2010, so this is the days pre-Zuckerberg and hoodies and cool developers. These guys were librarians, ostensibly. They were cardigans and spectacles, lovely fellows. But we were sitting in front of them and saying, this is what financial advice is, Jay, and trying to explain fee for service and explain insurance, and looking at us like we had, three heads. And as we were doing this with them and building this product, they were explaining to me how software really, really worked under the hood. And we loved that stuff. And I had my best friend at the time was sort of running operations in our business, and he and I took this like ducks to water. And I remember having water cooler conversations with the CEOs of AMP at the time, Craig Dunn or Craig Mellor or whomever. And I was saying, Joe, how's business? And I'd say, what do you want to know? I know everything. And they say, no, you don't. I said, what do you want to know? How many leads we got yesterday? Who your biggest client is? Who's the most expensive client to service? How many appointments I've done? What's our biggest insurance policy? What do you want to know? I know everything. And they said, so I pull out my phone and look at stuff, and they were baffled. So how do you know this? Well, I don't rely upon the tools you give me. We do our own thing. And they said, okay. So they gave me some money to go and run around Australia doing workshops promoting this stuff. And there was one in Geelong. You were there, and a whole bunch of guys were there. And it was a humbling experience, let me tell you. So very young and full of hubris, saying, listen, what does Jay Burke know? I'll tell him how financial advice should be run. And I would present these things that I was running. And then no matter where I went, Brisbane, Perth, Geelong, somewhere, someone would throw something at me that I hadn't thought of. And they would say, how do you handle whatever, accounting partnerships or something or other? And I'd say, why would you do that? And this is in front of 30 advisors or whatever. Why would you do that? Well, I run my business this way, and we do aged care advice this way, and very public, humbling a lot of the time. And I'd say, that's actually, I remember one week Ross Hopkins asked me some question. I said, I've actually never thought of it that way. I actually think you're right. That's the better way to do it than X, whatever I was doing at the time. That was pretty humbling. So I run around the country and just show this product off, and people say, what about this, what about this, what about this? Now, today, we get that every minute of the day, and that's our model of going around. The improvement of the product is seeded from these interactions we have with people like you. But I ran around and did that, and slowly but surely, I became a software guy rather than an advisor or a GM or the director of business. Running around doing software because there was interest in this product, and people saying, "You guys seem to have solved a lot of the things that we're the same business as you, and if you've got a product that works better than this other one we've got, we'll go and buy yours." So slowly but surely, I was out of a mode that I was comfortable in, because how do you build a software business, Joe? Do you know? If you work it out, please let me know. But how do you build a software business? You got to write code and ship it, and how do I install that into Britain, and how do I manage that, and how do I do updates, and how do I recruit developers? How do I talk to a developer and manage them and encourage them and empower them? Because developers are a different breed, Jay, if you didn't know, than advisors naturally are in terms of HBDI and brain profiling, that sort of thing. They're different. I didn't know what I was doing. There's no software business degree you can go and do that teaches how to do this. I knew how to run a financial advice business with my eyes closed, but I didn't know how to do this. So serendipitously, I had built a Microsoft-based product for financial advice, and some strange fellow in Geelong had also done the same thing as me. And we were the only two in Australia that had done this. And he reached out to us in 2016, 17, and said, hey, it's like that Spider-Man meme, the meme where all the Spider-Man are pointing at each other, or just the two of us. And he said, you're a dynamics-based CRM in financial advice. I said, yeah. And he said, so am I. I said, again, I've always had a bit of an ego and a bit of a self-confidence. I said, you probably are, but you're not as good as us. We're bigger than you probably, I assume, because we could look up and work out who he was. And it was true. We'd sort of progressed more with sales and built a sort of a larger client base in his. And that's where I met Stephen. So Stephen Handley is our business partner. He was based in Geelong. Very, very, in many ways, similar story, Jay, to mine, in that he worked in the financial advice business, was frustrated by the tools he was given, went and built their own solution out of a need to understand their own data and their own business better, got interest out of that. He was talking to another advisor. They said, have you got a product? Yeah. And so spun it up. Very, very similar. Now, his background pre that was different to mine. He's a degree in musical engineering, and his personality is very different to mine. But we ended up at the same place somehow. The paths at Crows against someone, Kismet or serendipity, we ended up at the same place. And he tells his story better than I do, but we met at a bar in South Bank in 2017 or so, and he said, I tend to saunter into places for whatever reason. I don't know why I do that, but I do. I sort of sauntered into the place, and he saw me coming. He said, this must be the guy. And we spent 4 hours talking over beer about life and values and business and what's your background, and you love the Beatles, I love the Beatles, this is all good stuff. And at the end of that meeting, we basically said, we're probably going to merge these businesses together, actually. So there's no business plan around that, by the way. We just we'll work it out the details later. But it didn't make sense that we would both be doing the same thing in different parts of Melbourne, complementary skills, complementary problems. So we decided very quickly to just merge the business together. So FinPal, his business, and Mia, my business, became Fin365. It was FinPal at the time, but we got into a bit of trouble from PayPal, and they didn't like the fact that PAL was in our name, and we had a bit of an argument with them. So we changed to Fin365 to reflect the Microsoft connotation to what we do. And I became employee number one of the business. Many feels like a long time ago now, and since 2017, 2018, our business has grown from literally me only to, good Lord, staff in 4 countries: Australia, Philippines, Vietnam, Argentina. and we've got some contractors in Portugal, so 5.
USA.
And USA. Stephen lives in the US, so 5. And sometimes it's still remarkable to me, Jay, that we've built this thing. It's still a bit strange, especially with, I'll segue to Joe in a second. We've sort of gone from one employee, which is me, and Stephen was sort of in the background doing part-time stuff still, to being 180 staff or something like that. It's remarkable sometimes. And when I sort of say that flippancy to people at my kids' soccer team, they say, what do you do? I've sort of got this business of 180 people. They say, how many? That's a big business. I say, is it? Yeah, okay. Because the growth has been sort of organic and more explosive recently, but because you're in it, it's hard to recognise the scale of that success we've had, and it's quite remarkable. But one thing we realise is we need help, and what Steve and I are good at is doing, and probably not, which is humorous given my background, we haven't been as great given the accelerated growth as we should have been in systems and guiding principles and SOPs, as you said, all of that stuff. I mean, you need to get some help. So we were talking to a customer of ours, some crazy people in Geelong, Burke, Britain, crazy buggers they are. And they were talking about this other outsourcing firm they use called SMSF Paraplanners. And we said, paraplanning? I don't need paraplanning, actually. And I think the first thing I ever said to you was change the name, because you shouldn't call yourself that, because you're much more than that. You're undervaluing yourself. We need help, is the point. So we came to Joe and said, we need some staff in the Philippines. They have a background in financial advice, so they understand our core audience as well, and it was sort of symbiotic in that way. I mean, we fell in love. The one thing we loved about Jo from day one is she's very similar to us in terms of attitude and values, and more importantly, Steve and I are both guilty of this. We're getting told off at a dinner with staff last night, for being told off by our own staff for doing this. We love to help too much. We undercharge, we overservice. If Jay picks up the phone and calls me and asks me about some random thing, we'll spend an hour talking about whatever because we love to help. So does she. She shares that value. And you could argue it's a non-profitable habit to have, but it sets us apart. When we get feedback from customers and things, they say, that's what makes you guys different. If I want to pick up the phone and say, can you explain Copilot to me in 10 minutes? We'll say, sure, because they can't get that answer from anyone else, is the point. So we tripped across Joe, and is it 3 years we've been sort of dealing with each other?
2021, so it's actually 4 years.
4 years, sorry. So we started in earnest with just having staff, and it was just a purely commercial sort of arrangement where...
Well, it actually started before that.
How to start before that? Did I mess up the Kismet story?
Yeah, so when we had been asked by our practices to, like, which CRM should we be using, because there was a lot of noise in the industry and in financial planning in the space in the time. And one of the practices that asked us was Britain, like, hey, should we be using Salesforce? Should we be using this? So Xeppo was another one. And so I started going, actually, I've got other practices asking me about that. I should start doing some research into this just to give some...
Did you vet us, Joe? Did you put us over the coals?
Hell yeah. So Amy said, have you looked at Fin365? And I'm like, no. So that was literally the starting point of me doing research into Fin365, stacking Fin365 up against 2 other softwares very objectively, doing a presentation to my clients about which CRM I liked and why, and that's literally where it started.
That's a good point. So again, Amy clearly asked that or had the conversation because they trust you. They trust your input, they trust your feedback and your analysis of what their needs are. And that's the sort of, as our business changes over time from being, we are a software product ostensibly, but we are labour as well. We are technology consulting, and people can engage us to help design processes, Jay, to your point, or build cool solutions or little AI agents or whatever. We are lucky enough, and I think this is partly because of Joe's brand and our own reputation, willingness to help, and they're a trusted advisor, sort of just like you would be, Jay, for all your customers, where you are the trusted advisor. Should I buy a car, Jay? Should I do this? You become the central point of anything technology. We get asked that now, and I think it's a commendation to you.
I think about it as, well, I'll use some thin terminology in terms of connections, right?
Yeah,
so
absolutely is.
You guys, like us, I think one of the things that we share in common is a want to connect people to solutions.
That's right.
Yeah. If we have a look at and it hasn't actually been formally released yet, but one of the values for us as a business is creating connection, and that is identifying problems and drawing a connection between it. Might be between 2 unrelated parties with zero zero expectation that there is a return to us initially for making that connection, because we know, back to your point, Greg, that time you spent with me asking stupid questions about Copilot builds the first law of relationships and looking out for one another, covering and moving. Add value. And I think that what is clear to me that's different between both of you and your businesses from a lot of other businesses, and same with us from a financial services business, is that the importance we place upon relationships and connections. It is everything. Without that, nothing else works. It's a moot point. You might be able to muddle through for a while. You'll be able to get through, and you might be able to rape and pillage your way through an industry for a short period of time, but then you get found out because you have no connections, you have no relationships, you've built no relationship capital. It's exhausted. So I think that it's definitely the thing. I can say that right now. It's the thing that has attracted, even if we haven't thought about it consciously, it's the thing that's attractive about the relationships that we've had with you guys over now a pretty reasonable time. We skipped your background, Joe. So we started on the how Finn and Quirk came together. You might extend on that, but just beforehand, let's just give me a little bit of your backstory that adds some context to why you actually hooked up with Greg.
Sorry, Glenn. Joe's husband.
I finished my degree in New Zealand and had no idea what I was going to do next.
You have an accent. I thought we heard something.
Just a wee one. So came to Australia for a 6-week holiday to visit a friend and never left. One of those stories. And then I literally was sitting on a plane reading a newspaper. I hated the job that I was at, but I was reading a newspaper and there was a job for a paraplanner at AMP. I didn't know what a paraplanner was.
Did you know what that was?
Not at all, but applied anyway.
So you both took job ads out of the paper?
Absolutely. That's where it was before really the internet was a thing that much, really. That's how old we are. So anyway, I applied for this job at AMP and got it, and absolutely just fell in love with financial planning. And within about 18 months, I was out in a practice with running the paraplanning, but with an intention to become an advisor, but ended up really fast-tracking into that advisor role so quickly because I just, like, the advisors that I worked with and my mentors at the time, Chris and Keith Ogilvie, would take me out with them to show me when I had written this plan, when you put it in front of a client and you actually show them what it was like, whoa, this is actually an incredible thing that we are doing here. So all of a sudden I was like, no, I've got to be an advisor here. So that was 2001. So similar to Greg, became an equity partner, grew inside this big firm. We were very big because we had a huge corporate super base. However, we brought in a Sherlaw's business coach quite early on. And I was really lucky because they treated me like an equity partner from day one, even though I wasn't. And so the Sherlaw's coach really sat down with me and we went right through process driving the entire business, which was an incredible opportunity. And I loved it. I just lapped it up. So from then on, my love of process and efficiency was kind of born. So grew that business, moved to the Sunshine Coast because that's where my husband grew up and always wanted to. And after about a year of trying to run Cornerstone Financial Group across from Sydney and then the satellite office in the Sunshine Coast, we recognised we were at very different paths and left very, very happily. And then because I was on the Sunshine Coast, I didn't know anyone and I'd gone from this huge supportive business to a single planner practice business. It's like, I don't actually know if I can do this on my own. So I thought I'd just set up this little side hustle of paraplanning, because it's something that would bring in cash, right? So I was sitting at a Grant Abbott conference one day and I had this little light bulb moment. I should call this SMSF Paraplanners because I love SMSFs. No one is paraplanning in the SMSF space. I'm going to call it that. So that was 2010, and that's when SMSF Paraplanners was born. And then thankfully, both businesses grew and just took off, which was both a blessing and a curse. So I had this advice business where I'd created these accountant relationships that were flourishing, trying to do that on my own, plus having this paraplanning side hustle that had now had like 6 or 8 paraplanners plus compliance. It was like, well, how do I do this? And realised pretty quickly that, number one, trying to run 2 businesses with a lot of distractions going on, I wasn't doing either business justice, and I was really letting I felt like I was letting my clients down in the advice business. I also recognised that me being an advisor, being able to help individuals was awesome, but I could actually help more people if I was helping back office and advisors run their businesses more efficiently. I could actually help more people by doing that, by not being the front person myself. So kind of came to that conclusion and went, I think I need to focus on this business and let this one kind of don't focus on that. So at the same time, I recognised running a paraplanning or an administration style business out of Australia with Australian-based wages was never going to be a profitable solution. So decided that I needed to go and start thinking about moving offshore. So that was 2014 when I was introduced to another party who was also looking to set up offshore. So we literally went to the Philippines in October 2014, went to a place called Cebu where it didn't exist at the time, and I hired 5 paraplanners. These poor kids had no idea what it was, and introduced a new career path into Cebu. He hired 10 CSIs at the same time, and that was the start of the Philippines. Like Greg said before, you fall out of love, you understand that your values sometimes are not aligned, and you divorce. And so 2017, we took that out. I just took that out on my own in the Philippines, and all of my staff came with me, which was a humbling and a big learning experience. But again, absolutely no regrets, because the amount that I learnt out of that relationship, I never would have gone to the Philippines on my own and set this thing up on my own, I don't think. So without that relationship and without starting there and the lessons I took, I wouldn't be where I am today either. So it was definitely a worthwhile relationship and a lot of lessons out of that. So then that was the start of it. And then Burke Britain was our second administration client. So we were pure paraplanning when we left in 2017. And literally Burke Britain were our second administration client. And that was tough. So that was me, and I'd literally hired a CSO, and we literally sat with Amy and started learning processes. And it was like, whoa, okay.
The hands dirty.
Oh, yeah. So that's basically my history of how I got into where I am, and obviously sold the advice business along the way, and started focusing on the back office instead of the being in front of clients.
They're obviously similar but different backgrounds, leading to a common point. One of the questions I had is, which may not be obvious to those listening, but why is the combination of CRM, outsourcing, and admin support so important, powerful, sought after in financial services right now? What is the reason for that? Why do you think that the alchemy between the two of you that have brought, or more than just the two of you, but brought your businesses together, what is it that's happening at the moment in financial services that make it so sought after?
Do you want me to take this on?
Sure.
What you made a comment earlier, Jay, about, to paraphrase it, let the bakers bake. What we find often in most firms, whether it's Morris, lovely fellow who works in insurance, he's ostensibly to be a one-man band, and I had a conversation with him the other day. He's a small customer of ours in the scale of things, but he's a nice fellow, so I spent time talking to him for an hour about his life and his business. Good example. He's happy with the product that we have, that he buys from us, but his business pain points are they're not sure where they should be spending their time. He's an advisor, and he's the primary breadwinner. He sees the clients, he writes the policies. He's spending time checking certificates of currency, and he's spending time these are not data problems that I solve for him. These are functional tasks that he has to do in his business. And mind you, his wife works with him, and they have another admin person as well. They're struck for time. And when I said to them, as I always do, Jay, what's the most fundamentally important things in your business, and what are those tasks, and break them down, and who does them, and how are they done? We spent half an hour doing this. And I said, it's very, very evident that Erin's time, there's one of the staff members there, Erin's time is better spent doing X. working on claims, helping customers realise their claim on the insurance, and there's a big win for that because it's great. Not downloading certificates of currency from AIA or doing whatever manual grunt work that needs to be done. Not to say that the work that a Filipino would do is grunt work, but I said you've got a couple of options here, Morris. Either stop doing that work at all, but you can't because it's fundamental to be able to deliver. You can't get away with not doing lodgements, can you, Jay? You have to do them. Someone's got to do them. And he said, you know what? I need to support stuff. I said, well, lucky we've now bought an outsourcing firm. I can introduce you to the other side of the business if you like. So, and then the ability to manage staff remotely, and we're a totally disparate business. We've got a Geelong office, but we are spread out all over the world. Data and the ability to manage and empower staff is not micromanagement, Jay. I've got an answer to me, many Filipinos. I know what they're doing every day. When they do something really well or do something really, really efficiency, I know because we have data in front of us. And I say, hey, Dean, great job yesterday. I saw that job. You did it really well. It was under cost. Wonderful stuff. If you don't have core SOPs, to use your Jocko language, SOPs and data and systems to help manage them and promote them and encourage and sometimes give them feedback about things they can do better. We've had this with some Quirk staff in the past where, Jay, I'm not sure about outsourcing. Well, why not? Well, because I don't want to manage them. I don't want to see what they're doing. Can you just put them on and stuff will just work? You need to treat them like real people. You need to spend time with them, build relationships with them, but then you need to have systems and data to help talk about facts. Not, you're doing a good job. I hate stuff like that. How am I going to do a good job? On what context? Am I doing appointments well? Am I doing productivity? Have I outperformed? How? Give me numbers. I'm a data fellow. So combining labour and responsibility, the system can't do all that. We'll talk about technology and AI later. You still need labour and people and care and responsibility and motivation. Labour, that's what the Quirk side of the business is. And then you need systems to help manage them and make sure they're executing the job well. And are they focusing on the key things? Wasn't that one of your Jocko tenets? Are they focusing on the key things?
Prioritise and execute.
That's all that is. So when we see sometimes, because people come to us saying, Greg, Paraplan, outsourcing doesn't work. And I say, okay, yeah. What did you ask them to do? Stuff. What stuff? Admin stuff? What does that mean? If they came to work in Cebu on Monday, what are their core job functions? Do they know? How do they measure them? Do you measure them? Do you talk to them about, again, accountability and promotion and give them good things? No. I just assume that Quirk would just solve all that for me. And I say pretty publicly to those sort of principals that say those things to me, you need to embed that stuff in your business. Whether they live in the Philippines or live in Geelong or Newtown, you need to treat them like they're a real person and a real staff member. They might happen to be another part of the world, but systems and labour make a fundamental impact on advice businesses. You spoke earlier about, it's a difficult labour market. We know that in software. And when I talk to principals, whether they are, FBA Practice of the Year, which is our customer, what is their biggest challenge? What do you think the answer is, Jay? What's the biggest challenge they have in front of them? People. They can't recruit staff and train them or onboard them fast enough to deal with the end client demand. We have a highly under-advised Australian population. You know this. They're only going to get worse with aged care and ageing population and the number of advisors that are now around. Our practices can't find help. Now, we are not recruiting and training advisors. That is not our MO. But we are trying to help our practices spend their recruiting and energy time on recruiting and training their own advisors. The back office stuff, the admin stuff, power planning and CSOs and things, we will assist with that where possible to make that mental load on recruitment and HR easier for them to manage.
And I think to take that to the next level is if you've got, like we were saying before, you don't want to just keep adding bodies, right? Mm. So if we have staff that understand the importance of data and start fundamentally shifting the data that is being collected by the practices to clean up that data and continue to drive the cleanliness of that data, then it means we have a better opportunity to start using automation or other things to stop us from hiring additional staff because we can use technology smarter because we have access to the data now. So I think it's about, and this is one of the things about like the next 12 months for the joining of Quirk and Fin365, Quirk's focus is going to be to become a technology-focused outsourcing business. So it's about absolutely taking everybody on that journey with us to start using our systems better and to start using data better and to make sure that we are always enhancing our customers' data and just use of technology to be so much smarter. So it's giving us a huge opportunity, I think, for practices that are using both Quirk and Fin365. it's like you're going to see that, you're going to start seeing it whether you think you're going to start seeing it or not, because the training that we're doing, and it's not just how to use Fin 365 or how to make the most out of it, it's Power Platform, it's, how can I use Power BI better? What should we actually be taking out of our customers' environment for KPI reporting instead of doing that in two places? If we just put a dashboard in place, the data's already there. We could actually just pull that dashboard and use that for our KPI purposes as well. So it's little things like that where you're going to start seeing enhancements without even thinking that this is something you need to be focusing on.
Yeah. I asked Amy for some stats. I asked her too late on sort of what we'd seen in terms of it. I said, have we got any stats? I know we can get it. I probably should have asked you, Greg. You probably could have got it for me.
Do you want to jump on the phone? I'll pull them up if you like.
But it's clear to us. I mean, the amalgamation of technology. And I vividly remember conversations that I've had with you, Greg, around. I'm sure that the impregnation of data was embedded by you.
But that's not natural though, Joe. We still get this today, every day, because we have new customers coming in. And I had a conversation yesterday with an advisor, and he said, random question, should we hire more advisors? I said, that's a tricky question. I said, so why would you hire them? Do you have a customer base that you can't service now? Do you have referrals coming in that you can't service now? Why would you do this? Give me the data. And they said, we don't know. I just got a feel. It's like a FOMO.
Gut feel.
Maybe I should hire advisors. I said, give me the data points. Why would you do this? Is it on the, would you hire advisors as a lead factor? Maybe I'll get referrals. Now I can go and get referrals without fear that I can service them? Or do you already have them? Oh, a bit of both. You ask those data point questions and get that culture into your head about data. Should I do this? Should I do that? As business owners, all three of us, you have those nighttime paranoias of, are we doing enough around service? Are we doing enough around marketing? Are we doing enough about X? What do I always say to you? What does the data say?
Yeah.
If you don't have it, create it, start building it into the culture. From now on, everybody, we're going to start doing things this way. Track the data. And over time, you'll have trends. I say that to every advisor I've ever met. It's not all of us as advisors by quals. It wasn't taught to us, Jay, to think this way. It was client service and absolutely should be. What is the advice strategy that's going to help realise this customer's need for a happy, successful financial life? Good for them. But in terms of running the business, because we all wear multiple hats here, all of us, we don't get taught to unpick what makes Burke Britton a great business. Is it, how do I grow these graduates and PYs? And what constitutes a good PY? Is it just attendance of a number of appointments? People are asking us this, saying, Greg, how do we manage PY? And for those that don't know what that is, because of legislation change now, if you want to become an advisor, you need to do a degree around advice and then spend a whole year doing an apprenticeship, ostensibly. And while there is some guidance around what that looks like, you should see the deviation, Jay, that I see every single day of what successful PY is constituted by. And I sit in rooms where they say, well, it's admin, 6 hours on admin a week. And I laugh and say, what does that mean? Are they doing the task? Is that file noting? Is that ownership of the task? Is that attendance of meetings? What does that mean? And they say, well, what do you think? We're not sure. That's not our place to always do that. But again, detail is key for me. So if there's always a balance of, we're talking in the car on the way here, Joe, of subjectivity and objectivity, Joe. I think you should be able to rely upon your gut. And Joe, you've been a great, PY candidate. You've ticked the boxes, but there should be an element of subjectivity to that. I think historically in most of the business we've seen, it's been subjectivity first, not objectivity first most of the time.
Yeah,
Massively.
One of the things that
we've had that conversation.
We have.
Should I buy this book or not?
Yeah.
Go back to 07 or wherever.
Yes.
And we had some pretty frank conversations
Yes.
about, should we buy this book? And I said, do you want my research? Here's what I found. Take it. There has to be an element of, I think we're all people by nature, and what's the word? Hairless monkeys. Ultimately, we've got a bit of weird stuff in our brains about what makes us human. But I like to think data first where I can.
Yeah.
And I'm still an emotional guy, and I wear my heart on my sleeve a lot of the time. But
it's definitely one of your strengths, and one of your other strengths is being able to ask clarifying questions. And I have, over my time, I've tried to do that much more often. It's a phrase that I think it was Tim Ferriss says. He hates the word overwhelmed. And people say I'm overwhelmed, and I know what the questions that would come after that, like with, why, like the question of why, what is overwhelming? I'm overwhelmed. We need to put on more staff. I'm overwhelmed. I've just got too much on. And what was it? Tim Ferriss said that overwhelm is lazy thinking and indiscriminate action. meaning that you just
Doing stuff without purpose.
we're doing shit without purpose, and like taking that time. Well, the issue for a lot of practice, and us included, was that like until you actually have a focus on the data, it was so hard to get the data. Like it was so hard, you had to dig through 1,000 different places to actually find the data. That's one thing. So that's what you've taught us and showed us and helped us with is actually putting data at the forefront of your thinking. But then once you've got the data, you actually need to have the manpower to execute on that. And I think this is where, again, back to the magic of the coming together of Quirk and Fin365 is that you combine the technology with sort of outsourcing and support and administration. It is pretty amazing. And I did ask Amy for some stats. I said to her just this morning, I said, like, ballpark. She said, I think there were 3 things. I think she said the outsourcing, having the outsourced team functioning very well, having integrated Fin as our CRM with opportunities and all of the pipeline in here, and technology with SMAs. That was the other thing that additions. She said that our turnaround times, without trying too hard to look, have reduced by 50%. Like we've cut everything in half.
It's amazing.
So reduced turnaround times, improved data accuracy so we can make better decisions. The thing that I always forget and I get reminded of a lot is that the original why, the client experience. What has it actually allowed us to do? And we've both said it, or we've all said it in different ways, but what does it allow me as a principal, as an advisor? And that's what you said, Joe, when you were talking about your role in the practice previously when you're in a financial planning practice, that you could see that if I create some efficiencies here, we're going to be able to support more people.
That's right.
Like we're going to have more relationships. So I think, again, you combine those things together, and I think any practice out there, whether they be in financial services, accounting, or financial planning, like if you're not thinking about this, and we'll talk about AI shortly, but if you're not thinking about this, honestly, you're going to be left behind.
I think, Jay, as part of that, you're right when you said earlier about the sort of what's the phrase? The sort of looking down upon or the minimization of the value of mentorship and strategic thinking and business planning. We've been lucky because of our origins for the AP network that we were able to go to PD days and go to offsites and learn things and have the time forced upon us to say, tomorrow's a PD day, sit and listen to others speak about their experiences and take those lessons. A lot of the principles that I talk to day to day, because in financial advice has gone through some changes, not as many PD days or opportunities to share ideas anymore, forums to do so, they feel as if they're in a bubble. And they are by themselves in an office in Geelong thinking, am I doing the right thing? Is this right? Can someone validate these thoughts for me? Am I on the right track? Should I recruit more advisors, Jay? Should I do marketing or whatever it may be, social media? And I say, well, have you asked others? I don't have the forum. I don't have the
network.
Yeah, I don't have the collegiateship anymore to have that. I know I see these guys every other week at an AMP conference or an FPA conference or whatever it may be. There's a bit of a loss of that. So whether it's coincidence or not, we get lent on for some of that. And I say, well, what do you want to know, Jay? He says, what is everyone else doing? Am I on the right track here around KPIs or remuneration or client service? What constitutes good client service? And I say, well, what do you want to know? We're lucky enough to have eyes across hundreds of firms like this.
Yeah, but this is back to, sorry to keep coming back to it, but it's relationships.
And
It is.
It's connections,
relationships
like you
and connections, relationships and connections, relationships and connections. It's the.
You know what's weird about Jo that I love? She's really, really curious. Now, we didn't do a HBDI profile on her before we decided to merge in, but I know that about her. And that's what I'm curious too. And so is Stephen. We like to know things. And not just about the analytics or mechanics of how Burke Britton runs or an accountancy firm runs I spent a day at a Geelong-based signwriting business years ago who was a client of ours just because I wanted to learn how a signwriting business runs. And it was, think about a signwriting business. They had trays and pieces of paper with manual quotes and things, and I wasn't judging any of it. But I sort of just look and say, how do you get jobs and where do they come from and how do you know and how do you quote them and who does that? And they just ran me through the process and I learned something out of it saying, that's an interesting way to hold people accountable and how do you allocate the jobs and who goes out in the truck and who sticks the sign on the side of the road or whatever they're doing. there's something learned. And the guy said, because he was our customer, I said, can I come and spend a few hours just looking? He said, why? What do you want to know about this for? I'm curious. I want to know how someone running business runs. I wanted to learn that. We see that a lot. Most principals we ever deal with are curious about their own clients' lives and tell us your grandson Jay and how's the footy team and Peter Burke's a life member of the footy club. And I know that because I pay attention and I listen and I'm genuine. We try to encourage that in our team to always be genuine and always be curious where we can, but it's hard. We struggle with it sometimes.
But it's also what you said before about if you don't have those types of values and you're not doing it for the right reason, you'll get caught out, you'll get found out really quickly. That's the same thing, right? And it doesn't matter whether it's staff members, practice principals, advisors. If you're not doing it for the right reasons and you don't value those connections and those relationships, you will get found out really quick.
Can I give you a quick anecdote? It was really funny. I spoke to one of the partners of our biggest customer. They're in Collins Street in Melbourne. They're prestigious and whatnot. I haven't spoken to this partner in 2 years or something. But when we spend time, it's meaningful time. I asked them about the business and themselves, and he called up. I had 10 minutes in between meetings, so I answered the phone. I probably shouldn't have. If you asked the team, I shouldn't have answered it. But I answered it, and his name's Chris. I said, Chris, how are you? He's like, yeah, good. I said, how's the cat? And there was a pause for about 5 seconds, silence on the phone. And he said, how do you know about the cat? I said, I was there the day you bought the kitten, and you showed me a photo of it 2 years ago, and I remember. And he said, he didn't say positive things. He said, that's really strange. Do you remember
weird,
that?
you creeper.
That's what he said. Something to that effect. And he said, and he kept going on about it. I said, what do you want? What are you on the phone for? He said, but how did you remember about that cat? I said, there's something about our business, and Stephen's very like this too. We remember things about people that makes it meaningful and makes a big difference to, we may one day lose that customer, but it's probably less likely because they'll say, these guys listen to me and they know about the cat, and Joe knows about my family and my mother and the health issues they might have and whatever. We try to be genuine, Jay, all the time. And sometimes that's data and having tough conversations saying, listen, this is not good. I'm concerned about X, Y, Z. Other times it's just being human. That's all it really is. And we try to encourage the team. Filipinos are unlucky enough sometimes to be looking at Excel because you have to do data migration and sort of do these things. And they look, and it just becomes rows and columns and rows and columns. And we try to encourage them to talk to the firm they're doing the migration for about these rows are people. They're customers of Burke Britain or whoever. That row there that says Greg Davis in it, that's a person somewhere. So getting that data right and the migration accurate makes a big difference. If we get it wrong, what difference does it make? It could result in Teresa calling the wrong client, saying the wrong thing if we don't get that right. So yes, it's just Excel. Oh, boring. Who cares? No. Try to be genuine. Try to do things with purpose and be.
The one thing that you've got wrong there is it's not trying to be genuine. It is be genuine, and that's one of the things with Stephen and Greg, where our relationship became very obvious that it was going to work, was because we all have the same values. They genuinely care about other people, and it's the same with the relationship with Burke Britain. The reason that those relationships work so well is because we are all on the same path with the same one goal, and we all have the same values.
Yes.
And I think that makes a substantial
Can you
difference.
teach that? Can you teach that? If you're recruiting staff, can you teach that, Joe?
Jocko would say that leadership is a skill that you can train, and like anything, you would people have tendencies. So you have tendencies to maybe have like greater empathy, but I think absolutely you can set the conditions so that the right people will flourish. And maybe the verbiage you said, like try to be genuine. I understand exactly what you're saying. Like you wanting to be part of the culture. Like if you don't actually, it can be inherent, and you go, well, yeah, Greg and Joe and Steve are always genuine, but I want that to be overt to my team. I want them to know that this is what we live in. This is what we live and breathe by. We are genuine, and sometimes you might not feel like being too genuine. You might be having a bad day or whatever. But it is foundational to the way we function. And I just had a thought when you were talking about remembering that the cat and what's collided.
Shout out to Chris's cat.
Yeah, what collides there, and I go back to how we use your technology at the moment, is that we will capture that. Like there are experiences for the client that we will capture. Ben had an example yesterday where he said, I wanted to know the date of birth of a grandchild of a client, and good luck 5 years ago having any idea where to go for that. He knew in his head, he knew there was an event, there was a birthday or something coming up. And that's great. It's in my head, it's in Peter's head, it's in a planner's head. It's kind of useless when it comes to data and being able to respond. So with technology now, with the ability to very quickly
nothing makes me happier than hearing practices use the data for what it's built for. We built it for this reason.
Yeah.
That same customer, Chris, do you know what they have every single day, Jay? They've automated such that every advisor gets an email, a reminder, or they use different tools, but a reminder every single day of, here's your birthdays for today. Your customers' birthdays, their kids' birthdays, and their grandkids' birthdays.
Yeah.
And they look at them and go, what will I do with this? They text some, they call others. But they get told every day.
They literally had this conversation last night.
Happens.
Well, I said, wouldn't it be great if in the morning, because we do, and maybe we'll talk about this offline, but we get reminded every day of the birthdays of our clients. I said, wouldn't it be awesome when you went to email a client, or when you went to email the client, it just up the top it said, here's some milestones that are coming up in either side, like a week before, a week after, when you're about to send the email. So you could say, happy anniversary for next week. If I don't, it is so powerful. And again, it's not genuine. The fact that people think that like automating, like remembering people's dates of birth and sending them an auto text. There is a messaging service, and clients will get acknowledged from the business when it's a milestone. But the planners will also personally, every morning, I look at my diary and I can see whose birthday it is today, and I can send them a message.
And that makes all the difference to that client. All the difference.
We now capture wedding anniversaries. We do capture things like date of passing of a spouse, like
send flowers and all that cool stuff.
Again, are we being non-genuine by doing that?
Not at all.
No.
Because I know that if that's left to my memory to do that, no, I can't. And how do I scale that? And scaling not with just a business profitability in mind. How do I reach more people that I can have an awesome relationship with? And the Daniels and the Bridies and our graduates of the world, when they start to come through in financial planning, they can have unbelievable relationships, and they're not burdened by the things that we were burdened with over a decade or more, where we were dealing with administration or compliance issues. No, I want to put the advisor at the forefront of the relationship. I want them having greater conversations, and that, in many senses, the question that comes up a lot on the podcast is AI. It's probably a reasonable segue into sort of the benefit of automation and AI. And I'll get both of your thoughts on this. We've kind of touched on it, but my sense is that I think there's very little chance that AI destroys financial services. It will change the dynamic radically, in my mind, in an extremely positive way. Meaning that Jay Burke, will be able to see many, many more clients and have many more relationships and connections, and be able to do problem solve for them at a greater level with greater efficiency than I ever have been able to do in the past. So let's talk a little bit about automation and AI. And I knew this would happen because I know that we can talk. We literally could talk for 8,000 hours.
We're talkers.
But I love it. I think let's talk AI, and then maybe I'll conclude with a couple of thoughts. But AI, workflow automation, and analytics, like where do you see that going over the course? Well, I said 5 years, but just let's go shorter than that. Like, just give me whatever time frame you want. What do you see the AI, workflow automation, analytics going over the course of the next 6 months, 12 months?
Massive opportunity inside both of our businesses, all of our businesses really, because it's the ability to start using automation to remove some of those tasks that are repetitive over and over again, that are done by CSOs or paraplanners day in, day out, that we should not be doing. If we can use automation to remove the doing of those daily repetitive tasks, it frees us up to be doing more actual value add tasks rather than these tasks that are taking a lot of time to really not add much value at all.
Totally agree. mean, Jay's right. If you listen to the Spruikers, the Sam Altmans of the world, the Satya Nadellas of the world, you won't need people anymore, Jay. AI is going to do everything. You won't need Teresa, you won't need Daniel, you won't need anybody to do anything. I'm a non-believer in that reality. I've seen technological change over 30 years. The possibilities are heavily promoted, but the implementation is poor, generally speaking. We've had versions of automation, let's call it, so Power Automate, for those who don't know what that is. It's a Microsoft tool you can use to automate anything, pretty much. You can do bloody anything with it. Its use across financial services and across most business I know is next to nil. And yet they complain about, they think AI is going to solve for that. And I say, well, there's already tools and have been around a long time. You can, citizen development, Amy could learn how to use Power Automate across a few days if she want trial and error. And some of our customers have, because they just want to learn themselves. There's a firm in Geelong that have a whole person who just does Power Automates all day, every day. Smart lady. You can... AI is a sense of what I'm worried about with AI is a sense of removal of responsibility, meaning AI will just do it. Get the AI to do it, and there's no involvement or human intervention. The way I like to frame it is much like your own, Jay, where I say AI is an empowerment more than anything else. If it gives you the ability to tap you on the shoulder by surfacing data very deeply, saying, by the way, it's Peter Burke's best client's grandson's graduation tomorrow or today, because it's a data point somewhere. And doesn't require someone to go and think and check and do all that. AI can do that. There's no question about it. It's the empowerment of what that allows, certainly a sense of financial services. Could it likely do modelling of goal-based scenarios? Yeah. We think about the inputs. Think about the inputs. Income, situation, tax structures, goals, scenarios, legislation, regulation around Centrelink rules, aged care, RADs, whatever. Of course it could.
It is.
But that's not what we are, so I'm not particularly worried about that. But is that the right thing? Does that take the essence out of what an advisor is? No. An advisor is a life coach, an accountability coach, and a friend, and sometimes a disciplinarian, a tough friend to say, Greg, you shouldn't do that, you should do this. Stay on track. What are the goals? Let's do this. And dissuade them from putting all the money into Bitcoin or some other crazy idea they do. That's what an advisor truly is to me. And if I think about the broader application of AI against many other people I know people that work at Visi, I know people that work in mental health and social work, I don't see it replacing all white-collar workers. That's the phrase. If you read the Wall Street Journal or whatever they're saying, white-collar work is gone. Data analysts are gone. I had this conversation with our team, Jay, yesterday, because we had them in the city doing a bit of a powwow. And they're talking about, well, what's the future of data analysis then? So Amy's got a KPI Power BI dashboard she looks at to sort of work out KPIs. Well, why do we need people looking at that anymore? Well, would you fully trust an AI agent in the next year or two to decide for you what constitutes a good KPI for Ben or Delta or whoever? I wouldn't. It's that fine balance we said before of subjectivity and objectivity of what KPIs really are in terms of, is it client service? If you sat in front of me as an advisor at Burke Britain and said, Greg, you haven't done as many appointments as you should, or your revenue numbers are not as good as they are, but we value client service more than anything else, and you've done the most client service of anyone, and the retention of those clients and the NPS scores and the satisfaction levels or the referrals received from those customers are off the charts, would an AI agent be able to come up with those inclusions as data points? No chance. So, but that doesn't mean you can't use it to empower the calculation and the computation of those numbers. You absolutely can. What I'm seeing a lot of, though, again, I'm be a bit of a grumpy old man yelling at cloud now, I'm already seeing, to some extent, a level of passing of the buck responsibility-wise in a generation where people are saying, I had this argument, or had this discussion with Stephen's youngest son when I was there in the US recently, and I was talking to him about what's the difference between Googling and using ChatGPT, for example. And I said to him, he's only 13, he's just turned 14. It's a lack of critical thinking is what the problem is. Now, everyone's moved away, mass migration away from Google searching. So what that means is the business model for Google and their ad clicks and all sorts of things is challenging for them. But if I was going to Google something like, what are the Centrelink rules, Jay, about whatever, historically I'll get a whole bunch of results, and it was incumbent upon me to read all those results, critically think and compare and work out the answer myself. Now I just plug in to the GPT and say, what's the answer? It does that research and gives you, sometimes it hallucinates, sometimes it does its things. And people, I'm seeing more and more in customers and outside of our customer base, people will just, it said X. The answer is X. And I say, that's totally wrong. Have you thought that through or double checked it? No, why would I double check it? It says this. I'm seeing that happen. This is real scenarios in customers and in our side. My own son says, I search something on GPT and I say, well, that's fundamentally wrong. And I can prove it to you, with data.
I'm not sure who said it, but the example or the analogy was, think of AI or ChatGPT or Copilot as the most. It might have been at the Fin conference, where think about it as the most eager assistant that you've ever had. They will go and hunt for information, but you've got to verify.
It's validate, yeah.
Yeah, you've got to verify. So they're eager. They'll go and they're going to make some mistakes. They'll do a heap of the grunt work for you, but you need to your point, Greg, you need to critically analyze that. And I was thinking when you said about advice. I think without a doubt, AI is going to be able to give you the bones of strategy and in investment mixes and insurance levels. To me, one of the benefits is the earlier you can have that in the experience. Like if we can have that very early on, I can start talking to the client about it straight away. Or if I think that it's wrong, I can do 2, 3, 4 iterations of it, rather than have a statement of advice, a financial plan that takes a month to prepare. It's going to take me, 2 hours to proof in full. The efficiency gains, to me, extraordinary. But to your point, Greg, as long as it's looked through with the lens of you still need to use your own brain and you still have the curiosity and the willingness to challenge. Because if you don't, I think you're left to the mercy of whatever errors or incorrect.
Rightly or wrongly, we are pretty honest most of the time. About a year ago, I had Stephen forward me an email that he had been copied into to one of our customers, and he said to me, does something seem off about this email to you? And I took about 0.01 seconds to glance at it, and I said, AI wrote this.
Pattern recognition.
In my brain, I took 1 second just to the structure of the sentences and the way it was done, and I know the fellow that sent the email, he doesn't speak like that or write like that. I said, this is AI, and Stephen said, there's no way one of our guys, he was a local Australian guy, there's no way one of our guys would have done this. Now, is that wrong? No, we don't discourage it. You could use Copilot all through our bidders, do whatever you want, throw it, throw things at it, do what you want, create a marketing presentation deck, whatever. But putting up guardrails and cultural expectations around, one of our comments earlier was, well, I said try to be genuine where you can. I think if Jay emails me, I should respond to Jay in my natural language. Say, hey, bud, how the kids, how's the jiu-jitsu going? It's all good. Yeah, blah, blah, blah. I remember things.
I know.
Sending that via Copilot that wouldn't know that, saying, hi, Jay, thank you for the question. Yeah. I think that's not genuine, personally. And again, it's an absolution of responsibility to me, saying, I'll just get the email. The Copilot comes up my email saying, do you want me to draft a response? Yeah, click it and send it. So that's not genuine.
Here's the dichotomy, right? Here's the balance. That you still want your team. You don't want them sending that non-genuine AI-generated email.
Not as is.
But you do want them practicing, trialing.
Yes. We encourage
them
that.
Experimenting. You want them to be curious. How could I use this? And providing that feedback and taking responsibility to maybe create some.
And the fellow we were Stephen asked him about it. He said, yeah, I was just being curious. I was doing what we asked them to do and try tools and true things. But you're right, the dichotomy there is, in that particular situation, it was in conflict with where our values are. Our values are be genuine.
Yeah.
Don't automate everything. Yeah. Don't automate the relationship part.
Yeah.
If it's automating data in Excel, go for it, whatever. If it's the part where I say, hey, has an operation gone? Yeah, all good, whatever. Okay, that's different to me. Don't automate. We should trademark that. Don't automate the relationship part.
Well, you can't, right?
Why? Yes, we can. We've got lawyers and stuff to do this.
It's not real.
Get Copilots to do it.
I listened to a little clip of Jocko this morning talking about. He talks about relationships, and he says, someone asked me, "What, Jocko? What is a relationship?" And he goes through. Probably don't have time now, but I'll send it to you, where he defines what a relationship is, and actually it's trust, listen, respect, influence. They were the 4 categories that formed a relationship. You had to think about it and think, actually, what is it? Trust, respect, listen, influence. I'm pretty sure that I've got those 4 right. But yeah, it's it's such a critical foundation of this combination of AI with relationships. Again, my view back to that point is that I think that people who do it well will succeed massively over the course of in the very short term if they can get that balance right of using technology, using data, using people resources, continuing to maintain relationships and continuing to build connection. Now, I'm mindful of time. I think I've got an appointment that's just about to arrive if they haven't already. I want to conclude with a couple of things, and then I'm going to give you guys a chance to sort of call to action to anyone that is out there listening in financial services, accounting, lending, whatever. But these are the three kind of lessons that I had, and I pre-wrote them, but I think we've covered off them pretty solidly. I knew we would. Number one I had was focus on the core mission. So if you're a business out there, focus on your core mission, outsource what isn't your specialty. Number two, use technology, use analytics as the foundations for scale and client experience, which intuitively might not be what people initially think about when you're thinking about data and technology. And three, back to what we spoke about originally about the power of partnership, which was partner with people who challenge your thinking and extend your business capacity. So they were my sort of three lessons learned from this conversation. And again, I probably could have written it with my eyes closed and without having this conversation. We better close up, but in terms of calls to action, we're going to have, I know other advisors, I know some of our other professional partners listen to this. What would your call to action be to financial services, accounting firms that are, hearing this and want to centralize their systems, they're struggling with recruitment, or they're spending way too much time in their business and not on it? What's their call to action from you guys?
That's easy, Jay. Don't wait. Procrastination is a killer. We see it in every firm we ever talk to. They say, Jay, do you have an answer to what's the meaning of life or financial services? And I said, what have you tried so far? Nothing. I thought I was just going to ask you and you were going to tell me the answer and I'll be solved. We are not seeing enough curiosity and people trying. I've got access to Power Automate or Copilot agents. I can go and build something. I might not get it right. I might stuff it up. It might only solve a 1 second task. But if you can do that task 1,000 times a week and save delta time, then do it. We're not seeing enough of that. And I think because it's the noise, there's a lot of noise going on. No one's really sure whose responsibility is to build these things. Is it Fin365? Is it Microsoft's? Is it Quirk's? Is it Amy herself? I'm not sure. We're seeing a lot of that where they're coming to us and they say, build this for me, Jay. And I say, you could do this yourself in 10 minutes, seriously. If you go here and click this and do this. And is it that easy? You've just got to start. It's like exercise or learning a new language. Just start. You don't have to rely upon industry servants like ourselves to do it all. Now, we're happy to help if it gets more complex or you need accountability, as you said. Just try. Start.
Sounds like you just talked people out of getting in touch with you at Fin and Quirk.
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. They still come to us anyway. I recommend they're curious. They try to start, and they say, yeah, but I don't have the time. Time is a big factor to you.
I think what people just saw in you was what I have always known is that you'll never get a hard sell from Greg. Like he's going to give you information to make an informed decision before he hard sells you. And so you make your own.
What's the most common thing we get, Joe? We do that same genuine response, Jay, and most of the response generally is, can't you just do it? We just want you to do it. We trust you guys. You know what you're doing. Thank you for giving away 20 minutes of free value and genuine responses, but you just do it instead because we'd rather not. We say, okay, well, thank you. We will.
I think for me it would be understand your mission and where you're adding the most value to your mission. And if you are doing things that are not adding value to your mission, then you need to be rethinking the systems that you're using, the processes that you're using, the data that you're tracking. To me, it's like understand where you should be and where you should be spending your time and think about who is doing all these other tasks.
Look, we're agnostic of the tool, Jay, a lot of the times. And we're talking about, we get those philosophical questions about, what's the future of advice, Jay? Should I hire more advisors? Should I buy a practice? Should I start an accountancy firm? Should I merge with an accountancy firm? And we genuinely say, what does the data say, Jay? I don't care whether you use spreadsheets or Xero or Xplan or whatever you're using. Go and look at the data, work out what the data says, and then have that inform your decision. Don't just fly by the seat of your pants or gut feel. I mean, again, as we said, the balance between subjectivity and objectivity is important, but data first where possible.
Absolutely.
So the person that's listening to this, the business that's listening to this, and they don't have the data, they've gone tick, tick, tick. We do all of those things we're failing on. How do they get a hold of you? How do they get a hold of Greg and Joe? And who is that business that should be coming your way? Are they an accounting business? Are they a financial services business? What other industries or areas do you guys support?
Yeah, that's easy. Financial services generally. So we've historically been born out of financial planning. We know that profession really, really well. All of us. We're still advisors by quals, but we are absolutely a full service accounting and financial services solution. Yeah, so we're happy to serve that market.
LinkedIn, websites,
Yeah, how do we get hold of
all
us?
of that. Yep.
Yep. Again, we are not. I know we're going to wrap up, Joe, but we're not rigid in that. We're very open and very genuine. We get people LinkedIn, private message us, and email us, which you can do at help@fin365. Any method you want, we'll jump on a call, even if it's a genuine question about, you said some stuff, Greg, about Copilot in that podcast. Can we ask you a question about it? Knock yourself out. We'll happy to answer any questions.
Awesome. Well, I knew this would be the case. We could talk for hours, and I think we've gone. We had a long intro, but we're nearly a couple of hours talking, and I look forward to having you both back on for a round 2 and a round 3 and a round 4. And thank you so much for your support for our business and for our clients over many years. We've loved the relationships that we've had with both of you and your teams, and I look forward to it going to from strength to strength. So thanks again for joining us on the podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks,
Thank
Jay.
you.
Thanks, Britain team.
Thank you.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you're keen to understand more about how financial advice could benefit you, follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Burke Britain FP, or Google Burke Britain Financial Partners. Check out our client reviews, testimonials, and make a time to meet one of our certified financial planners by clicking Book Now on our website. Thanks for listening.
Any information contained in this podcast is of a general nature only. No account was taken as to the objectives, financial situation, or needs of any particular person. Therefore, before making any decision, listeners should consider the appropriateness of any information with regard to their particular objective, financial situation, needs, and seek independent advice from a licensed professional specific to their circumstances.
All right, hit it.
That translates to, don't be a moron and act on what some random person says on a podcast. Take personal responsibility, do your homework, ask questions, and speak to an actual human that knows what they're talking about before you do anything. PB Financial Solutions Proprietary Limited, trading as Burke Britain Financial Partners, are authorised representatives of AMP Financial Planning Limited, AFS, licence number 232706.